Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're about to delve into a chapter of history that honestly feels incredibly heavy and, well, really important.
Yeah.
It's a period many Sikhs refer to as the Fourth Galahara, or Holocaust, and we're talking about Punjab in 1984.
That's right. And this isn't just, another historical event off in the distance.
Yeah.
It's pivotal, it's incredibly painful, and frankly, it's a largely unaddressed chapter in Indian history.
Yeah.
It really demands our full attention, our empathy.
Absolutely. And our mission in this deep dive, what we're trying to do here is really understand what happened, why it continues to resonate so deeply, even 40 years later, and how it all feeds into this ongoing, urgent pursuit of justice for so many people.
Exactly. And it's crucial right from the start to acknowledge that this deep dive is about respectfully navigating some very difficult truths.
Yeah, it feels like we have to be really careful here.
We do. Our focus is squarely on the facts and the immense human impact. We're not here to sensationalize anything.
Definitely not.
Because for so many survivors, the trauma is like it happened yesterday.
I can only imagine.
There's one quote that really drives this home. Someone said, "It's hard to forget even 38 years now. It's hurting. That's why I don't share everything with my kids either."
Wow. That hits hard, that feeling of it's still hurting right now.
It does. And that raw sentiment, that enduring pain, is really what we're aiming to understand and honor today. It's not just history, it's living memory for a whole community.
So, to really get a handle on 1984, we can't just jump straight into the events themselves, can we?
No, not really.
It sounds like we need to understand the backstory, the seeds of discontent that were growing for a long time before.
That's exactly right. You need the context.
Where do we even start with that? Is it about Sikh identity itself or the specific historical problems they face?
Well, it's kind of both, actually. They're really tangled together.
You okay?
To understand 1984, you first need to understand the people at the heart of it, the Sikhs. So Sikhism is a monotheistic religion. Started in the Punjab region of northern India back in the 15th century.
Founded by Guru Nanak.
Founded by Guru Nanak, exactly. And its core teachings are incredibly powerful. Things like belief in one God, the fundamental equality of all human beings.
Which must have been pretty radical back then.
Oh, absolutely. Revolutionary, really. And it still is. Plus, there's this huge emphasis on selfless service, seva, helping the wider community.
So it's about living these values like love, equality, respect.
Precisely. These aren't just like nice ideas on paper. They form the foundation of a community built on shared principles and taking care of each other.
That makes sense. But it's not just about spirituality, is it? I feel like I've heard about a strong focus in Sikhism on like justice and defending rights. That seems really important here.
It's absolutely central. And that brings us to this foundational concept of the saint soldier, the Saint Sipahi.
Saint soldier. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It's this idea really formalized by the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, with the creation of the Khalsa Panth, the 5Ks. The 5 symbols initiated Sikhs wear.
Yeah, I've heard of those, like the uncut hair, the comb, the bracelet.
Right. The Kish, Kanga, Kara, Kachera, and Kirpan. They aren't just outward markers, they embody a deep commitment. Take the Kirpan, the ceremonial sword or dagger. It's not just a weapon. It symbolizes the readiness to stand up for truth, to protect the vulnerable, to fight injustice.
Okay, so it's symbolic, but also about action.
Exactly. And this ties into another really profound concept called Miri Piri.
Miri Piri.
Yeah. Miri represents temporal or worldly authority, the power to govern, to protect, engage with political realities.
Like the practical side of things.
Right. And Piri signifies spiritual authority, the path of righteousness, meditation, devotion. The spiritual side.
Okay.
Together, they mean that faith isn't separate from worldly action, especially action for justice.
So you have to be involved in the world, not just withdrawn.
Precisely. Sikhs are taught to be both saints and soldiers, to fight for justice, defend others from oppression no matter what. Their identity is deeply rooted in this history in Punjab, covering social, cultural, political, land. Everything.
Wow. That dual commitment, spiritual purity, and worldly responsibility for justice, that feels key.
It's absolutely key to understanding their actions and reactions later on.
Okay, so we have this deep-seated identity, the saint soldier, a community focused on spirituality but also fiercely committed to justice and defending themselves. That context makes the feeling of betrayal after the 1947 partition of India. Well, it makes it feel even more painful, doesn't it?
It really does. It wasn't just politics. It felt like a fundamental break of trust right when India was being born.
And it's true they contributed a lot to independence, right?
Immensely. It's a fact that's often overlooked. But sources say Sikhs made up something like 80% of the deaths during the independence struggle.
80%. While being only, what, 2% of the population?
Exactly. The sacrifices were huge. And in return, key leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru made very specific promises to the Sikhs.
What kind of promises?
Well, promises about special consideration, about ensuring any new constitution would satisfy them, even about an area in the north where Sikhs could experience the glow of freedom.
Okay, so real assurances if they chose India over Pakistan.
Yes. Gandhi said, in the future, the Congress shall accept no constitution which does not meet with the satisfaction of the Sikhs. And Nehru mentioned, brave Sikhs of Punjab are entitled to special consideration.
But those promises, they weren't kept.
Largely unfulfilled, yeah. And that ignited this deep sense of marginalization, a feeling that festered for decades. It wasn't just an oversight. Many saw it as a foundational betrayal.
Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning, setting this really unsettling precedent for how minority concerns might be handled. And sadly, that initial crack in trust, it only deepened over time. It laid critical groundwork for 1984.
Wow, that's a really tough start for a new nation, relationship-wise. So this feeling of being let down, it led to actual political movements, didn't it? Like wanting a Punjabi-speaking state.
Exactly. That sense of unfulfilled promises directly fueled the demand for a linguistic state. The main Sikh political party, the Akali Dal, pushed hard for it.
Why was language so important?
They argued, pretty logically, that Sikh identity was deeply tied to the Punjabi language. It wasn't just about speaking it, it was integral to their culture, their religion, their history.
Makes sense.
But their initial demand in 1953 was rejected by the state's Reorganization Commission.
Rejected? Why?
They basically claimed Punjabi wasn't different enough from Hindi and didn't have enough support.
Wow, that must have felt like another slap in the face.
It did. It felt like an attack on their distinct culture. But after years of protests and agitation, the Punjabi Sua, the Punjabi-speaking state, was finally formed in 1966.
Okay, so they eventually got it.
They did. And Sikhs formed a majority there, about 54% Sikh, 44% Hindu. But it was a hard-won fight, and it reinforced this idea that their concern only got addressed when they really pushed hard.
Right, not because the system was listening proactively.
Exactly.
And that hard-won battle then leads us to the Anandpur Sahib Resolution in 1973. This wasn't just one single demand, was it? It sounds much bigger.
It was way bigger, yeah. The Anandpur Sahib Resolution was basically a comprehensive manifesto from the Shiromani Akali Dal.
The main Sikh party again?
Right. And it outlined demands for much greater autonomy for Punjab within India's federal system.
Autonomy, okay. What was the goal?
The goal was clear. Preserve a distinct Sikh identity and allow Sikhs to fully express their national sentiments, their collective aspirations.
So what kind of specific things were they asking for?
It was a pretty detailed list. They wanted Chandigarh, which was built as Punjab's capital but was being shared with the new state of Haryana, to be transferred fully to Punjab.
That sounds fair enough. Their capital city.
Right. It was symbolic, but also practical. They also demanded a fairer reallocation of river waters. They felt Punjab's vital water resources were being unfairly diverted, hurting their agriculture.
Which is huge for Punjab.
Absolutely. And they were concerned about maintaining the traditional Sikh presence in the Indian Army, something they took immense pride in. Plus, land reforms for farmers.
So, economic stuff, territorial stuff, representation.
Yeah, and maybe most fundamentally, they raised concerns about Article 25 of the Indian Constitution.
Article 25, what's that?
Well, the way it was written, it sort of ambiguously defined Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists as Hindus for certain legal purposes.
Wait, it legally called them Hindu?
In a specific context, yeah. But for the Sikh community, this wasn't just a minor legal point. It felt like a direct dilution, almost a legal erasure of their distinct religious identity.
Wow, I can see how that would be a massive issue. It undermines their whole unique faith.
Exactly. It was a deep constitutional grievance that really fueled that sense of being marginalized, of their identity being under threat within India. It's hard to overstate how deeply that resonates when your identity feels legally minimized.
Okay, so a really extensive list of serious concerns: territory, water, jobs, and their very religious identity. How did the central government react? Did they, sit down and talk seriously about these points?
And here's where things get really difficult, Nav. The Congress Party, the ruling party in Delhi, consistently sort of delegitimized these demands.
Delegitimized? How?
Instead of treating them as legitimate political issues to negotiate, they portrayed them as communal or separatist.
Framing it as dangerous.
Exactly, framing them as a threat to national unity. This view, often amplified by state-controlled media, became a huge factor driving the tension and conflict in Punjab.
So no real dialogue happened.
It prevented any meaningful dialogue, really. It effectively pushed the Akali Dal and the Sikh community further into a corner, making them feel like their valid aspirations were being deliberately twisted into something sinister and anti-national. Finding common ground became almost impossible.
Right. And against this backdrop, this really tense situation, we see the rise of Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. He emerges in the late 70s, this charismatic religious leader, especially popular with young rural Sikhs who felt left behind. He was strongly advocating for Sikh practices, becoming a big voice for Sikh identity and rights. What made him connect so strongly, particularly with young people?
That's a really important question. Bhindranwale gained a lot of traction because he spoke directly to those feelings of being ignored, of being marginalized, especially among rural Sikhs who felt the political system wasn't working for them.
He gave them a voice.
He did. He preached a return to traditional Sikh values and practices, which really resonated with a community feeling its identity was under threat. He offered a sense of pride, a sense of agency when many felt powerless. And he really shot to wider political attention after one specific, very significant incident.
What happened?
It was the Nirankari clash in April 1978.
Okay.
In Amritsar, there was a confrontation between a group of very devout traditional Sikhs, Gursikhs, and members of the Nirankari sect. Sikhs considered the Nirankaris to be heretical, going against core Sikh beliefs.
And it turned violent.
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
13 Gursikhs were killed, martyred, and many more were wounded.
Oh my God.
But what really angered the Sikh community, what made it a turning point, was the report of police inaction. Eyewitnesses said the police just stood by, didn't intervene to stop the violence against the Sikhs.
I just watched.
That was the report. And this incident is widely seen as critical. It radicalized Sikh politics significantly, sped up the discontent against the state. It really cemented this belief for many that the state wouldn't protect them, that they had to protect themselves.
Wow. Okay, that makes the next step much clearer. After this, in 1982, the Akali Dal, now joined by Bhindranwale, launched this Dharam Yudh Morcha.
The righteous struggle.
Right. A massive civil disobedience movement to push for those Anandpur Sahib resolution demands. So tens of thousands of people protesting peacefully. What was the government's response this time?
Swift and heavy-handed. They met the Dharam Yudh Morcha with mass arrests. Over 36,000 Akali Dal activists were detained.
36,000.
Yeah. And another 2,500 Sikhs were arrested preventatively. Just think about the impact of that. Tens of thousands of community members, leaders, ordinary people jailed.
That's not just cracking down, that's large-scale suppression.
It absolutely was. It further fueled the sense of state oppression and reinforced the idea that peaceful protest wasn't going to work.
And during the same time, it wasn't just arrests and police action, was it? It sounds like the government was also fighting a war of words, trying to control the narrative.
That's a crucial piece, yeah. The government and the state-controlled media actively started to malign Sant Bhindranwale, paint him as an extremist.
Just him, or?
Well, it extended beyond him. They increasingly portrayed all Sikhs, or at least those pushing for the resolution, as extremists and separatists.
Stereotyping the whole community.
Exactly. Effectively framing them as the enemy within. This narrative control was incredibly powerful and dangerous. It dehumanized Sikhs in the eyes of the wider Indian public.
Making it easier to justify harsher actions later on.
Precisely. It prepared the ground for what was coming.
And this wasn't just subtle hints, was it? I read about actual slogans being broadcast.
Oh, it was overt. Sources confirm that state television openly broadcast incendiary slogans. Things like Khoon ka badla khoon.
Blood for blood.
Yes, and Sardar Qualm Kedar.
Which means?
Sikhs are traitors to India. These weren't just, angry whispers. This was on state TV, explicitly inciting hatred and violence.
That's horrifying. It's like legitimizing prejudice from the top down.
It created an environment where suspicion and hostility towards Sikhs became normalized for many people outside Punjab.
And they controlled the information flow too, right? Like a media blackout.
Absolutely. A deliberate media blackout was imposed across Punjab. Reporting was heavily censored, facts were suppressed, and anti-Sikh propaganda was promoted.
So the rest of India only got the government side of the story?
Largely, yes. A highly biased version. It isolated Punjab, silenced any counter-narrative, any truth coming from the ground. The government's propaganda could just take root without challenge.
Okay. So with this incredibly tense, polarized atmosphere, with the state actively painting Sikhs as the enemy, we arrive at June 1984. And the event that is just seared into Sikh memory, Operation Blue Star.
Yes. The Indian Army's codenamed operation.
With the stated goal to flush out Bhindranwale and his armed supporters from the Golden Temple complex.
Sri Harmandir Sahib, yes. And not just there, but over 100 other Gurdwaras across Punjab were targeted too.
But the timing of the main assault on the Golden Temple seems particularly significant and devastating.
It's absolutely critical, and it's a source of immense ongoing pain. The main assault was launched on June 3rd.
And that date is important because...
As coincided deliberately with the martyrdom anniversary of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the 5th Sikh Guru.
Okay, so a major religious day.
One of the holiest days in the Sikh calendar, which meant the Golden Temple complex wasn't empty, it was packed. Thousands upon thousands of innocent pilgrims, families, women, children, elderly people were there to observe the holy day.
So launching the attack, then, it feels intentional.
Sources strongly suggest it was a deliberate choice, intended perhaps to cause maximum damage, maximum casualties, not just to the militants inside, but to the huge number of civilians present. It amplified the feeling that this wasn't just a military operation, but an assault on the Sikh community itself.
That level of calculation is chilling. Reading about how the operation was envisioned and rehearsed in advance, meticulously and in total secrecy, aiming for maximum number of Sikh victims, it sounds less like fleshing out militants and more like something else.
It points towards a deliberate strategy of causing widespread harm, not just achieving a tactical objective. And the scale was massive. Around 100,000 army troops were deployed across Punjab.
100,000? The whole state must have felt like an occupied zone.
Effectively, yes. And again, a complete media blackout. No independent eyes, no outside reporting.
So the true scale of the violence, the civilian deaths, was hidden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Allowing the official narrative to dominate. The army initiated the attack with heavy artillery, mortar fire. Tanks, including Vijayanta tanks, were brought in.
Tanks? Against a place of worship?
Yes. They caused extensive damage, particularly to the Akal Takht, one of the most sacred buildings in the complex.
And the people inside. Bhindranwale's supporters, but also all those pilgrims.
They were completely cut off.
Yeah.
No communication, no food, no water, no electricity. Yet reports indicate the Sikh fighters inside fought incredibly fiercely, holding off the well-equipped Indian army for 5 days.
Yeah.
Remarkable valor, really, under those circumstances.
But the pilgrims trapped inside, the eyewitness accounts are just horrific.
They're almost unbearable. Survivors reported seeing bodies everywhere. Children, women, elderly men shot at point-blank range, some found with their hands tied behind their backs.
Oh, God.
People dying of thirst, hunger. Medical personnel apparently threatened if they tried to help. Red Cross volunteers reportedly detained, stopped from aiding the wounded.
No help allowed in.
That's what the accounts suggest.
Yeah.
There's one particularly harrowing story of an 18-day-old baby.
An infant.
Yeah. Dying instantly from a bullet that went through the chest of the person holding them. It just speaks to the indiscriminate nature of the firepower used.
Yeah, and the numbers. The official death toll versus what others say. There's a huge gap, isn't there?
A massive gap. Officially, the government said 83 army personnel died and 493 terrorists.
Okay.
But military sources later admitted to over 1,000 Sikh deaths inside the complex. Eyewitnesses. They cited figures from 4,000 up to 8,000 people killed, mostly pilgrims.
8,000. That's vastly different.
Vastly. And then there was Sardar Simranjit Singh Man, a high-ranking police official at the time, an IPS deputy inspector general. He resigned in protest.
What did he say?
He stated that at least 30,000 innocent pilgrims died across Punjab during the wider operation, not just in the Golden Temple.
30,000. The discrepancies are staggering. It feels like a deliberate downplaying of the scale.
It certainly raises serious questions about transparency and accountability, doesn't it?
Definitely. And the destruction wasn't just lives lost. The Akal Takht was heavily damaged, you said. What about the library I read about, the Sikh reference library?
Yes, that was another devastating loss. The Akal Takht, the temporal seat of Sikh authority, was virtually demolished by tank fire. But after the army gained control, the central Sikh reference library, also within the complex, was burned and looted.
What was in there?
Priceless historical manuscripts, handwritten copies of the Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh holy scripture documents tracing centuries of Sikh history, culture, thought. Irreplaceable heritage.
So it wasn't just collateral damage, it felt like an attack on their history, their knowledge.
For many Sikhs, absolutely. It was perceived as a direct assault on their faith and their very identity, erasing their memory, their heritage. The loss is just immeasurable.
And the military action didn't stop after the Golden Temple assault, did it? There was something called Operation Woodrose.
That's right. Following Blue Star, the army launched Operation Woodrose across rural Punjab. It was described as a mopping up operation.
Mopping up what?
It specifically targeted Amidhari Sikhs, initiated, baptized Sikhs, who wear the visible symbols of their faith under the blanket suspicion of being terrorists or sympathizers.
So just being observant made you a target?
It seems so. It led to thousands of arrests, interrogations, torture, and extrajudicial killings outside the legal process.
And what happened to the bodies?
Disturbingly, many were reportedly secretly cremated without any record, without identification, destroying evidence, preventing families from even knowing what happened.
That's evil.
There were even reports of children, as young as 2, being subjected to torture during this period. It showed a systematic pattern of targeting the community far beyond the Golden Temple, creating this pervasive climate of fear and terror all over Punjab.
It's so much. The attack on the holiest shrine on the holiest day, the targeting of people, the massacres, the destruction of heritage, the state terror afterwards. It's no wonder these events became etched into the collective Sikh psyche as the Fourth Galahara.
Exactly. It created this profound sense of shared trauma, a collective fate that, as we'll see, continues right up to today as a foundational wound.
A wound that was tragically about to be ripped open even wider just a few months later.
Precisely. June 1984 was a defining moment, but it sadly wasn't the end. It set the stage for an even more horrific wave of violence across India.
You're talking about the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi.
Yes. On October 31st, 1984, she was assassinated by 2 of her Sikh bodyguards, Bhindranwale Singh and Jaswant Singh.
And this was seen as direct retaliation for Operation Blue Star.
That was the reported motive, yes. Retaliation for the attack on the Golden Temple.
And this event, her death, triggered an immediate, devastating wave of anti-Sikh violence, especially in Delhi.
Immediately. It was like a switch was flipped. A horrific wave of violence erupted across India, but the intensity and scale in Delhi were particularly extreme.
Now, I've heard these events often called the 1984 riots or the anti-Sikh riots, but you're saying that term riots is really misleading, aren't you?
Deeply misleading, yes. And deliberately so, many argue.
Why? How do we know it wasn't just spontaneous anger spilling over?
Because multiple independent fact-finding teams, commissions, human rights groups, and countless eyewitness accounts all confirm the same thing. This was not spontaneous rioting.
Okay, so what was it?
It was, I'm quoting findings here, a well-organized plan marked by deliberate actions and omissions from important politicians of the ruling Congress, our party, and authorities in the administration.
Organized by politicians and officials.
Yes. The term riot is problematic because it implies chaos, maybe 2 groups fighting. It helps exonerate the state from its duty to protect its citizens.
Right. It makes it sound like something that just happened rather than something that was done.
Exactly. What happened in November 1984 was a targeted, one-sided massacre, often facilitated, sometimes even directed, by people in positions of power.
That distinction is huge. And chilling. How methodical was it? Were people just attacked randomly in the streets?
Not at all. The methodical nature is one of the strongest indicators of planning. On the night of October 31st, right after the assassination, and into the morning of November 1st, Congress party officials were reportedly seen meeting with local leaders, local networks.
Organizing the response.
It appears so. They didn't just rely on random mobs. They used official government-issued voter lists and ration card lists to identify Sikh homes and businesses.
They had lists to find Sikhs.
Yes, often marking Sikh homes with an S or some other sign to clearly designate targets for the mobs.
That's terrifyingly systematic.
It is. And it wasn't random which Sikhs were targeted either. Often, poorer Sikhs, those living in resettlement colonies, often described as lowly castes, were chosen as soft targets. They were more vulnerable, perhaps less able to defend themselves or call for help.
That's just awful. And the logistics. Getting weapons to these mobs, moving them around, that must have required coordination.
It absolutely suggests coordination. Mobs were supplied with weapons, iron rods, knives, clubs, but also, critically, an abundant supply of kerosene, petrol, diesel, even white inflammable powder or chemicals.
Where did all that fuel come from? You don't just find that lying around.
Exactly. It suggests large-scale, prearranged distribution. not spontaneous gathering. And there are credible reports that state-owned buses, Delhi Transport Corporation buses, and even trains were used to transport assailants, organized groups, to Sikh neighborhoods.
Using government transport to move killers around.
That's what the evidence points to. This wasn't chaos, it was organized destruction.
And the media. We talked about the propaganda before June 84. Did it play a role again in November?
A huge and devastating role. The incitement was overt. State-controlled TV, Doordarshan and All India Radio constantly showed photos of the assassins, Bhindranwale Singh and Jaswant Singh, making sure everyone knew they were Sikhs.
Highlighting their religion.
Explicitly. And they aired those same hateful slogans again. Khun ka bagla khun se, blood for blood, and Sardar Qom ke Gadar, Sikhs are traitors to India.
Just broadcasting calls for revenge.
Yes. And even the new prime minister, Indira Gandhi's son, Rajiv Gandhi, was reportedly seen on TV passively listening to crowds chanting these slogans outside his home. His silence was seen by many as legitimizing it.
Wow.
The media's role in shaping public perception, framing the assassination in this purely communal way, just poured fuel on the fire. And false rumors were spread too, like Sikhs were celebrating Gandhi's death, handing out sweets.
Things designed purely to whip up hatred.
Exactly, to justify the violence that was already being planned and executed.
It sounds like a complete failure of the state to protect its citizens. But more than failure, it sounds like complicity. What about the police? Weren't they supposed to stop this?
This is one of the most damning aspects, Nav. The police complicity. In many, many documented cases, police were just mute spectators. They stood by and watched.
Watched people being killed.
Yes. Or worse, they actively participated. There are chilling accounts from survivors of police officers verbally encouraging the mob, saying things like, kill all of them.
No.
Yes, and police would disarm Sikhs who tried to defend themselves, take away their licensed firearms, their swords, anything they had, leaving them completely vulnerable to the mobs, the death squads.
So they were actively helping the killers.
In some cases, yes. There's one incredibly heartbreaking account of police going to a Sikh neighborhood, assuring them they'd be protected, telling them to hand over their weapons for safekeeping.
Okay.
And then, after disarming them, the police allegedly brought the mobs in to kill them.
That's beyond betrayal. That's monstrous.
It is. Police routinely ignored desperate calls for help. They refused to file official complaints, the first information reports or FIRs. Or if they did file them, they'd water down the charges. And there are accounts of police actively joining in the violence or leading the mobs.
Like the story of Bibi Jagdish Kaur.
Exactly. Her testimony is harrowing. She witnessed a member of parliament, Sajan Kumar, inciting violence from a police jeep. And she saw police officers laughing, congratulating the killers, a complete breakdown of law and order facilitated by those meant to uphold it.
That's just unbelievable. So specific politicians were actually seen leading these mobs. It wasn't just random thugs.
That's correct. The evidence points to direct political involvement. Specific leaders from the ruling Congress party were repeatedly named by witnesses in affidavits, testimonies, commission reports.
Ooh.
Names like Sajan Kumar, Jagdish Tytler, H.K.L. Bhagat, who were senior party figures, MPs, even ministers, plus others like Kamal Nath, Dharam Das Shastri. They come up again and again.
And they were actually telling people to kill.
Eyewitness accounts quote them directly. Sajan Kumar reportedly told mobs, these bloody Sikhs, not one of them should be spared. A Hindu that hides them in their house, kill them too and burn their houses. And urging people to kill the Sardars and loot and burn their properties.
Open incitement to murder and arson from elected officials.
That's what the survivors testified to, yes.
So where was the army in all this? Delhi is the capital. Surely the army could have stopped it.
The army was eventually called in, but not immediately. They were called about 24 hours after the violence started, but they couldn't effectively intervene on the streets until November 3rd.
November 3rd. The killing started on the 31st. Why the delay?
Reports indicate it was largely due to the Delhi administration's refusal to cooperate. They didn't provide the necessary support maps, guides, transport, clear orders for the army to deploy effectively.
So bureaucratic obstruction while people were dying.
That's the allegation. And there were direct accusations against the Home Minister at the time, P.V. Narasimha Rao, who later became Prime Minister. He was accused of being complicit in the failure to act, showing complete indifference as the violence raged. That delay, those crucial 48 hours or so, cost thousands of lives.
And then there's that infamous quote from the new Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi. What did he say and when?
He made his first public statement about the massacres on November 19th. It's nearly 3 weeks after they happened.
3 weeks.
Yes. And he said famously, "When a big tree falls, it is only natural for the ground to shake a little."
The ground shakes a little. He's comparing the murder of thousands to the ground shaking.
That's how it was widely interpreted, as effectively condoning the killings, dismissing them as a natural, almost unavoidable reaction to his mother's assassination.
That must have been devastating for the survivors hoping for justice.
He'd absolutely crushed those hopes. He didn't condemn the mob's actions. He didn't promise prosecution. For survivors, it felt like a clear message.
Yeah.
Your lives don't matter. This was just collateral damage.
The scale and the sheer brutality, it's almost impossible to comprehend. Can you describe what actually happened to people? And the numbers?
It's incredibly difficult to talk about, Nav, but it's crucial. Thousands of innocent Sikh men and boys were brutally murdered.
Ow.
Horrific methods. Beaten with iron rods, stabbed, dragged from their homes. And a common method was dousing them in kerosene or that white inflammable powder.
Oh, no.
Often forcing a tire around their neck and setting them on fire. Burning them alive.
Alive?
Yes. There are even sickening reports of children, babies as young as 13 days old, being roasted alive on gas stoves.
Daddy, I have no words. That's pure evil.
It's unimaginable cruelty. Official government figures eventually stated 2,733 Sikhs were killed in Delhi and 3,325 nationally.
But like with Operation Blue Star, are those numbers disputed?
It's heavily disputed. Unofficial estimates, based on detailed reports by human rights groups and journalists who documented the aftermath, suggest figures as high as 8,000 killed in Delhi alone.
8,000 in just a few days.
Yes, and potentially over 30,000 across more than 40 cities in India where the violence spread.
30,000?
And compounding the tragedy was the deliberate destruction of evidence. Mass cremations of bodies without identification, without post-mortems. Police records were manipulated or destroyed, all making accountability almost impossible down the line.
It sounds like they were trying to erase the crime as it was happening.
It certainly looks that way.
And reading through the sources, what's particularly agonizing is the emphasis on sexual violence. It wasn't just random assaults. It was described as a central element, a defining feature of the attacks.
It's an unbearable truth, Nav, but yes. Sexual violence was used systematically as a tool of terror and humiliation. Sikh women and girls were gang raped, often publicly, often in front of their children or other family members before those family members were killed.
Oh, my God.
Gudab Kaur's testimony. It's incredibly raw and painful. She describes losing her husband and 3 sons, being stripped naked, repeatedly raped in front of her youngest son, who was then dragged away and burned alive.
I can't. That's just...
Her story, and countless others like it, show this wasn't just about killing men. It was about destroying families, destroying dignity, inflicting the deepest possible trauma on the entire community through the violation of its women.
And what happened to the women who survived, who lost everyone?
Many who lost their male family members were eventually resettled in Delhi in places that became grimly known as widows' colonies, living in cramped, basic conditions, often ostracized, dealing with immense physical and psychological trauma. Decades later, it's a permanent scar.
And beyond the violence against people, were there sacred places, their symbols targeted again?
Yes, absolutely. Just like in June, this was also an attack on Sikh identity itself. There were widespread reports of the Guru Granth Sahib, the Holy Scripture, being desecrated, urinated on, burned. Profound acts of blasphemy.
Horrifying.
Sikh men had their quiche, their sacred uncut hair, forcibly cut off at deep humiliation, often right before being killed. Hundreds of gurdwaras, Sikh places of worship, were attacked, looted, burned. Sikh homes, businesses, factories, systematically looted and burned. Thousands upon thousands were displaced, left with nothing.
So it was a comprehensive assault on lives, bodies, faith, identity, property, everything.
Everything. Designed to break the community.
Given how systematic it all was, the clear evidence of organization, the involvement of politicians and police, you'd expect a swift and serious effort to bring people to justice, right? But that's not what happened. The reality seems to be this long shadow of impunity.
That's exactly right, Nev. The pursuit of justice has been incredibly long, frustrating, and largely unsuccessful for the vast majority of victims.
How did the government even respond right after the massacres? Did they offer help, support?
The government's initial response was often described, cynically perhaps, as a healing touch. But it felt anything but healing to the survivors.
What did they do?
They moved quickly to close down the makeshift refugee camps where survivors had gathered, forcibly sent people back to their burned-out homes, their destroyed neighborhoods.
Sent them back to where they were attacked. With nothing.
With minimal compensation. Sometimes incredibly small amounts, maybe less than £1 sterling equivalent back then, plus some basic rations. Often with absolutely no psychological support, despite the immense trauma people had endured.
That's unbelievably callous.
It left many feeling completely abandoned, re-victimized by the state that had failed to protect them in the first place. And the actual payment of compensation often faced long delays, sometimes seemingly tied to political calculations rather than genuine need.
So not only did they fail to help properly, but it sounds like they sometimes actively made things worse for survivors.
There were incidents that certainly suggest that. Examples like the government harassing people at the relief camps, trying to force them to close. One report mentions cutting off the water supply to the Shakarpur camp just days after the massacres.
Cutting off water to refugees.
That's what was reported. And another story about emergency blankets sent by Sikhs abroad for the cold Delhi winter. Customs apparently held the shipment for 6 months.
6 months, until winter was over.
Until the issue was raised in Parliament, yes. And perhaps most disturbingly, the police harassment continued. Survivors who tried to file complaints, who dared to name powerful people involved in the violence, faced threats and intimidation.
Like Bibi Jagdish Kaur again?
Yes, her account of being threatened by police for naming such big people is powerful. It created this climate of fear that directly suppressed the truth and obstructed justice right from the start.
This systemic obstruction, it seems like it continued with the official inquiries. You mentioned over 10 commissions and committees were set up over the years.
Over 10, yes, across 4 decades, all supposedly tasked with investigating the truth and identifying who was responsible.
But justice is still largely missing. How did these commissions fail so badly?
It's a long and frustrating story. The very first one, the Marwah Commission, set up in November '84 to look into the role of the police.
Okay, that sounds promising.
It did. But its crucial records, handwritten notes containing potentially incriminating police testimony, were reportedly never fully passed on to later commissions. And the government actually went to court to prevent its findings from being made public.
They blocked the first report on police involvement.
Yes, that set the tone immediately. Then came the Misra Commission in 1985.
What about that one?
It was widely, heavily criticized for basically whitewashing the massacres, accused of concealing evidence, blocking survivors from accessing information, and producing a report that focused more on abstract ideas of national unity than on actually holding anyone accountable.
The whitewashing. And what happened to Justice Misra?
Disturbingly, he was later promoted, became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the first chair of the National Human Rights Commission, and later even became a member of Parliament for the Congress Party.
Wait, the judge who led the controversial commission was rewarded with top jobs and joined the ruling party.
Yes. That sent a chilling message about impunity, didn't it? It completely undermined public trust.
Unbelievable. Were any commissions actually finding evidence against powerful people?
Some did make findings. The Jane Agarwal Committee in 1990, for example, it recommended registering cases against prominent Congress leaders H.K.L. Bhagat, Sajjan Kumar, Jagdish Tytler.
So recommendations were made, were cases filed?
No. Despite finding that the initial police investigations were completely inadequate, biased, no cases were filed against those leaders based on the committee's work. And the committee itself was eventually just wound up.
Another dead end. What about the Nanavati Commission? That was much later, right?
Yeah.
In 2000.
Yes. And the Nanavati Commission did acknowledge the attacks were organized carnage carried out in a systematic manner. It found credible evidence against figures like Jagdish Tytler, saying he likely had a hand in organizing attacks.
So official acknowledgement of organization and credible evidence, that must have led to action.
Well, it acknowledged some things, but critics say it still understated the full scale and nature of the violence. And crucially, while it confirmed police officers had manipulated records, destroyed evidence, even instigated mobs, the vast majority of those police officers faced little or no punishment.
Still no accountability for the police.
Very, very little. Conviction rates across the board remain shockingly low.
So even with credible evidence acknowledged by a commission, very few people were actually convicted.
Extremely few. As of 2024, we're talking about only around 12 murder convictions related to the thousands killed in Delhi. 12.
12 convictions for thousands of murders.
Yes. And many officials who were implicated were actually promoted over the years, not punished. There was one significant conviction. Sajjan Kumar, the former Congress MP, was finally convicted in one case in 2018 and got a life sentence.
Okay, so one major conviction, decades later.
Decades later. But many other cases are still pending or ended in acquittals. And Jagdish Tytler, the ex-cabinet minister named by Nanavati, continues to evade conviction despite facing charges. It's a pattern of systemic failure, not just isolated mistakes.
It really sounds like the legal system itself was part of the problem, part of the obstruction, like the police manipulating evidence from the start.
That was absolutely key to the impunity. Police routinely destroyed records, refused to file FIRs, filed weaker charges, conducted sham investigations. It made it almost impossible for later investigations or courts to establish the truth and secure convictions. It was a deliberate undermining of the justice process from within.
And when people kept demanding justice, kept pointing to this evidence, what was the official response? I've heard about this forget and move on line.
Yes, that's been a consistent refrain from government leaders and politicians over the decades when confronted with calls for justice. Just forget 84, move on.
How does that land with the survivors?
It's incredibly dismissive, incredibly painful. As survivor Darshan Kaur put it so powerfully, it is fresh in my mind like it happened yesterday. I will never forget 84. Those who say forget 84 are dead wrong.
You can't just tell someone to forget seeing their family murdered.
Exactly. Even former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, himself a Sikh, offered an apology in Parliament in 2005, which was significant. But he explicitly refused to accept state responsibility and warned against reliving that history, saying it wouldn't help national integration.
So, sorry it happened, but let's not look too closely at why or how.
That was a message many took. This constant pressure to forget, combined with the near-total lack of justice, prevents any real healing or reconciliation. It denies the victims their truth.
This brings us back to that crucial point about words, the terminology. The government usually says riots, but Sikhs, academics, human rights groups often say massacres, pogroms, or even genocide. Why is that word genocide used? Why is it so important?
It's absolutely vital, Nav. It's really a battle over the truth, over narrative legitimacy. Riots minimizes the state's role, implies spontaneous chaos, maybe even shared blame.
Right, like it just happened.
Whereas massacres or pogroms correctly highlights the one-sided, targeted nature of the violence. But genocide goes further.
How so?
Genocide is a specific legal term defined by the 1948 UN Genocide Convention. The absolute core criterion is the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group.
Intent to destroy. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sikhs are recognized as a religious group under that.
Yes, clearly. So the argument is whether the events of 1984 demonstrate that specific intent to destroy the Sikh community, at least in part. It's not just about the number killed, it's about the intent behind the killing.
So how does the evidence from 1984 stack up against that legal definition? What points to that intent to destroy?
Well, proponents of the genocide label point to several things. The deliberate and systematic nature of the violence we've discussed, the methodical manner of the killings, the sheer scale and character of the attacks across India.
Okay.
And especially the specific targeting of Sikh identity markers, forcibly cutting hair, desecrating scriptures, attacking gurdwaras. This wasn't just random violence. It seemed aimed at annihilating their very identity, their presence.
Attacking the core of who they are.
Exactly. And the underlying acts listed in the Genocide Convention, things like killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions meant to bring about physical destruction, like the mass displacement, the burning of homes and businesses, the denial of aid.
All those things clearly happened in 1984.
Clearly happened, yes. And then there's the crucial element of state involvement.
The complicity of the police, the politicians.
Yes. The pervasive involvement and complicity of state organs. The ruling party, the police through planning, instigating, ordering, aiding, or just failing to stop the crimes. This points towards state responsibility, making it not just mob violence, but potentially state-sponsored genocide.
Has this view that it was genocide gained any traction internationally, outside the Sikh community?
It has, increasingly so. While the Indian government vehemently rejects the term, we've seen legislative bodies elsewhere start to recognize it. For example, the provincial legislature in Ontario, Canada, passed a resolution condemning the November 1984 violence as genocide. The state of Pennsylvania in the U.S. did too.
So official bodies in other countries are calling it genocide.
Yes. It shows a growing international understanding and acknowledgement, which stands in stark contrast to the continued denial within India.
And what's the impact of that continued denial by the Indian state? Why does it matter so much if they call it riots or genocide?
That official refusal to acknowledge it as genocide, or at the very least as a state-sponsored massacre, has a huge impact. It fundamentally hinders the Sikh community's ability to achieve narrative legitimacy, to have their experience validated. It prevents accountability.
It keeps the wound open.
Precisely. It prevents genuine closure and reconciliation. It stands in stark contrast to countries like Chile, Argentina, South Africa, which, despite challenges, have made efforts to confront past atrocities through truth commissions and other mechanisms. India's denial perpetuates the trauma across generations and sends a terrible message about impunity for mass violence against minorities.
So looking forward now, what does the path towards healing actually look like? What are the Sikh community and its allies calling for?
They're emphasizing the need for a comprehensive approach now, something rooted in what's called transitional justice principles. It's not just about one thing. It's about several key elements working together.
Okay, like what?
Well, first and foremost, truth. Knowing the full truth is absolutely paramount for victims, but also for society as a whole. The decades of suppression, of denial, have blocked healing.
So what does truth mean in this context?
It means uncovering accurate casualty figures, fully documenting survivor testimonies, and critically, an official, unequivocal acknowledgement of the state's role in planning and executing the violence. Without truth, genuine reconciliation is impossible.
Makes sense. And then justice. What does that require now after all this time?
Justice means finally prosecuting the perpetrators, no matter how powerful or politically connected they are, or were. It also means reforming the institutions, the police, the judiciary that failed so badly, to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. The continued impunity is the single biggest obstacle to closure. Justice delayed is justice denied, but it's still necessary.
So truth, justice. What else? You mentioned reparations.
Yeah, comprehensive reparations. This needs to go way beyond the minimal, often delayed compensation offered in the past.
What should it include?
It should include restitution, giving back lost property, or compensating for it fairly. Proper compensation for all the losses endured: lives, health, livelihood. Rehabilitation, crucially providing long-term psychological and physical support for survivors still dealing with trauma.
And symbolic things, too.
Absolutely. Forms of satisfaction, like official public apologies from the state acknowledging its role, building memorials, and, very importantly, guarantees of non-repetition concrete steps to ensure the safety and rights of the Sikh community are protected in the future. And all of this has to be victim-centered, not just politically convenient gestures.
It really brings us back to that idea of intergenerational trauma. This isn't just history for those who lived it, it's impacting families today, isn't it?
Absolutely. It permeates lives both in India and across the global diaspora. You hear it in the voices of survivors like Vagi Kaur, who said years later, "To everyone else, the massacre took place 32 years ago, but for me, it just feels like it all happened yesterday. We haven't got any justice. The culprits are still roaming free. We're still fighting the consequences."
Still fighting the consequences.
That's deep emotional, psychological scarring gets passed down. Children and grandchildren inherit this legacy of trauma, of injustice, of fear.
But this pain, this injustice, it hasn't just led to silence, has it? It's actually fueled a lot of activism, especially in the diaspora.
It absolutely has. Sikh communities abroad, particularly in the UK, Canada, the USA, have been incredibly active for decades, raising awareness, documenting abuses, lobbying international governments to pressure India on human rights and justice for 1984.
And these efforts feel more relevant than ever with recent events, don't they? Things happening right now.
Uncannily relevant, yes. It shows this isn't just about the past. Look at the killing of Canadian Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada in June 2023. Prime Minister Trudeau publicly stated there were credible allegations linking Indian government agents to the killing.
That caused huge diplomatic fallout.
Huge. And then, the U.S. authorities foiled an alleged assassination plot against another Sikh activist, Jaswant Singh Khalra, on U.S. soil and charged an Indian national.
So alleged plots targeting Sikh activists in Western countries now.
Yes. It led to FBI warnings, to Sikh activists in the U.S., expressions of deep concern for the U.S. Secretary of State. It highlights that the tensions, the issues of Sikh rights, activism, and the shadow of 1984 are very much alive and playing out on an international stage today.
Wow. It really connects the past to the present in a startling way. It makes that quote from Lord Singh of Wimbledon feel even more powerful.
Oh, which one was that?
He said, "1984 demonstrates the fragility of democracy and the reality that majority bigotry knows no boundaries."
That's a stark warning, isn't it? And it's the core lesson here, really. Understanding this history isn't just about understanding Sikh history or Indian history. It's crucial for protecting minorities everywhere, for building safeguards against state-sponsored violence, for ensuring that never again isn't just a slogan, but a reality.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it's hard to shake the weight of these stories. The systematic injustice, the incredible resilience of survivors, and that ongoing, 4 decades long call for basic truth and accountability.
It's a lot to take in. And it reminds us powerfully that history isn't really past for those who carry its scars.
Definitely.
And it leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about, maybe. Given this history, the organized violence, the decades of impunity, what responsibility do we have as global citizens to advocate for justice, especially when governments resist acknowledging their own past?
That's a big question.
It is. And maybe also, how can communities make sure their own stories, their truths, are told authentically and remembered, especially when official narratives try so hard to deny or suppress their experiences? How do you keep memory alive against that kind of pressure?
Really important things to think about. Thank you for guiding us through this incredibly difficult but vital history today.
Thank you for exploring it with such care. It's crucial these stories are heard.